Hey guys, we're back. So this is part 2 and there's going to be a part 3, I'm sorry to tell you, because there's just too much footage that I want to show. And we're going to make it 3 parts where we hopefully finish the knife off. Anyway, right, so this is the drawing out of the billet where we finished off. And there's the billet. As you can see, this is where it was stacked and welded together and cut and forged back together. That little crease that's showing there purely wants grinded out, so it's not actually a crack. It just hasn't quite closed up. It's maybe 1/10 of a millimetre deep. So that's nothing. Don't worry about that. Right, the trouble with drawing out this particular Damascus, it's problematic because, and I've got a simple way to explain it. What I've got to do is crush this billet. Normal Damascus, you're pushing, like the leaves of a book, you're pushing down on it, and all it does, it compresses the layers. Feather pattern Damascus is orientated like that. Now there's 700 layers there, and this book has 500 pages, so we've kind of only got 500 layers here, we've got 700 there. And what happens when you push down is that and that and that is what I'm fighting against by crushing down that billet to make that side, which is the longest side, literally 5 millimeters thick. So I've got to push down on all them welds like that, like that, like that, to get that book that's kind of like that. Anyway guys, I'll crack on with this video, and I'll have a talk to you at the end. So here we go, there's our bar with the handle welded on. I'm just pushing down on them said layers now. It's never too bad with a hammer, because a hammer is a small surface, the end of the hammer, especially if it's slightly rounded, so it doesn't tend to burst the layers open. Ideally, what would be perfect here is a power hammer and not a press. So I'm going very, very gently under the press, just little light touches. And I was going to do this at welding heat, which I know I should have done. I should have started on welding heat rather than a forging heat. But I wanted to give it a try because at welding heat you lose an awful lot of steel to shale. You're burning up your steel really fast, and it's quite a time consuming process. So on this second pass the billet's going skew-if a bit, but I'm just being a bit too aggressive now. And what's going to happen is any second the corners are going to open up. It's probably already opened at this point. And that's where these things first start, right on those top and bottom corners. You see, I've gone too far. That was it, that's all it took. When I put it flat now, when I put it on the flatting die now, I now see the crack, which you can't see, but it's right there. So I've had to borax up again. And now I'm going to have to fix that weld with a hammer. It's absolutely crucial. It's only a tiny little delamination on the corner, but that will spread badly. So I'm going to have 2 or 3 heats on this now to make sure that that is properly welded. There's one there and there's one on the other opposite corner as well. So I'm just going to have to fix this, re-weld it by hitting it there right on those corners where the welds opened up. You're compressing the billet and it forces the layers back together again. And like I say, 3 heats because it's no longer a weld because it's open up, so it's going to need 3 heats to close that little weld up again. Now I'm just inspecting it there I've got the round point on that hammer to further compress that little crack in, and I'll hit it on both sides. Right, a second go at it now. being a bit more aggressive, beating on that, get that weld closed up, and also the one on the opposite side. Let's speed this up a little bit. Well, I'm happy that those welds are closed up now, so what I'm doing is I'm just squaring that billet up again. As you saw when it came off the press, it was a bit misshapen, it wasn't completely square, so just clean it off. I'll re-borax it, and now what I'm going to do to stop those corners opening up, I'm actually going to beat down on those corners and completely round them over, and that will really help the corners. It will stop the press tearing the corners open. It's kind of the same when you do twisted Damascus. If you twist a square bar, it's more likely to open up than a round bar. So here we go, let's start to get under the press. And as I say, I'm at welding heat now, and I'm losing an awful lot of steel to shale. These are the fullering out dies, and if you can see, I'm pushing the billet sideways now because it's not wide enough. I said that at the beginning, I'm going to have to really heave down on these welds sideways to make the billet wider before I start drawing the knife out. The second heat now on this, and I get it to where I want it here on the width without tearing the welds open again. And all this extra time at welding heat has really helped secure all those welds together, and rounding those corners off prevented them from opening up again. So a little bit more hammering now just to consolidate everything. Hammering on your billet knocks all the shale off, and you can see the state of the steel and the state of the billet much easier. Another one. Hammering actually does force feather patterns back together. If there's anything that's thinking about opening up, hammering on the anvil with your billet is really going to help you. So that pass looked great over the anvil, so I'm pretty confident now that we're good, we're safe to carry on drawing out this. So it only took, I think it took 2 or 3 passes on this. You can see the spacer there in the fullering die just to get me the correct thickness on my bar. I think it's about 6-7 millimeters thick there now, that billet, and it's looking like I'm going to have enough steel. I was really getting worried that I wasn't going to have enough steel to make this knife. I didn't want to forge it much thinner than 5 millimeter because at welding heat there's going to be a lot of decarb on the surface. You can see there that it's just the length of the actual blade now, so I need to draw out enough to put a tang on this. So the first thing I'll do is hammer the front in, hammer the point in, which will stretch the steel a little bit, and then I'm going to go back under the press, take that spacer out, put a slightly smaller spacer in and fuller it down, and I've done that there, and I've missed the step where I hammered on that tang because it took quite a while to beat down on that tang and pull that out. But essentially the billet there is 5 millimeters thick now. And here's me just finishing off the work on the tang, drawing out the tang, shaping it, getting it just the length I need really for this knife. So we're at 5 millimeters, and really it's almost forged to shape, this knife. You know, it just needs a very light edge profile. Now here, the heel right at the back there, it wasn't wide enough, so I'm hammering down on the edges. So I'm making the steel actually thinner there than the rest of the knife, and you will see this when we come to the cleaning up. You'll see that because that steel is thinner, you will actually see the decarb layer on the steel there. And that's it. I think I'm forged to shape at this point. I think everything is good. A little bit more work on the tip, and then we'll just flatten it off with the dies. Just get it really lovely and straight and flat. And that is it, we're done. 5mm, put the calipers on, perfect all the way along. So I'm going to do 3 cycles now in the forge. I'm just checking it here because it's really clean, the steel now, there's no flux on it, there's nothing on it. It's a good time to check for cracks. That's the second cycle. It's a little bit too hot, that, really. And that's the 3rd cycle. The colour's bad here, you can't really tell. I think I've been putting the lights on and off in the forging room. So after that had gone cold, we put it on the surface grinder then. This is a 40 grit belt. And I always just do a light pass on one side just to get a straight spine. And you'll see here we've got essentially one mainly flat side there now. So now that side can go down, and then we can get this rough surface off this side. I think this was 80 grit now. As you can see, once this gets flat, perfectly flat on those neodymium magnets or whatever they're called, it's really hard to get off. It really gets old. That piece of card is under there, so it's not so aggressively holding the actual knife. There, if you can see at the back, at the heel there, you can see where that blade was forged down just to pull out a bit of extra width. It won't matter because that will be ground off when I put the bevels in, and it's just now at 3.8mm. This is an etch, just to check that there's no cracks or splits or anything anywhere, because an etch will show them up, and that's showing the decarb there. That's where it's not been ground, you see. We've got a bit of a decarb layer. So here we are after all that surface grinding, and I think it's now around 3mm, slightly over 3.2. Profiles come out really nice. Profile's been ground in. There was a slight little nick on the front, which I saw during forging, and that came out in profile, and I knew it would. So that's where I'm taking the grind to. You can see the plunger. That's where the handle is. I'm now going to normalise this, grain refine it, put some anti-scale on and put it in the forge. This is the first cycle, 850 centigrade. And let it cool to black, and then we'll go in again at 800, and I'll go in again around 750, and then the 4th pass will be quenching then. The 10-minute soak into Parks 50 preheated. This is where we see if it's bent. It shouldn't bend, because after each grain refining, each of the steps of the grain refining, it was dead straight. It's dead flat, dead flat. The camera might not be able to see, but you can see the pattern now. Beautiful. Looks really good. Nothing opened up during quenching, so all the welds are really good. Let's go and rot weld test it, see what we've got. So here we go on the first test. 65.5. Perfect. Second test. 65.5. Third test. 65.5. Just beautiful. So there we go, guys. I've just finished editing the video. There is I think there's 15 minutes, something 20 minutes maybe. There's the blade after tempering, and we have achieved a uniform 62.5. There's all the test data on the blade, you can see it. We started off at 65.5, we did 3 temper cycles down to 62.5. Well, that's ready for tomorrow. Not dropping on my foot. What I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to blue back the spine because I want a soft back and a hard edge. I could have achieved that by putting clay on there, and I've done this before, and what happened was I got a visible hamon running through the centre of the Damascus, which I did not like. So into water tomorrow, get the torch on the back, soften it down, then we'll surface grind it again, then we can grind in the bevels and we can get a handle on it, and that will be the next video, guys. Okay, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, thanks for liking, and thanks for all the comments on your last video. Good stuff. The list, I'm sorry I forgot you, Eric. I'd been shuffling around the names on the Patreon list and updating it, and you just got missed off, mate. Anyway, we've cleared that up, and so see you in the next one, guys. I'll get that up. I'll be working on this now probably a day or two, and that video will be up in 2 or 3 days. Okay, bye for now.